The laundromat wasn't anything special. White walls, humming machines, the faint smell of detergent that stuck to your clothes even after you left. I didn't go there for atmosphere. It was just closer than the one across town, the one I used to use before moving into this building. But lately, it was the only place I didn't mind spending an hour in. She was always there before me. Sitting in the corner, paperback folded in her hand, glasses slipping a little down her nose. Mid-40s, maybe more, but there was something about the way she carried herself, like she didn't owe anyone an explanation for taking up space. Sometimes she brought tea in a small thermos. Sometimes just water. Always quiet. The first time she spoke to me, it wasn't much. I dropped a coin, fumbled for it on the floor. She looked over her book and said, "They eat those, you know. The machines." Her voice was low, even. The kind of tone you believe without asking why. I laughed too quickly, too loudly. She smiled barely, but enough. That was weeks ago. Since then, we'd fallen into something that looked like routine. Her corner seat, my machine near hers, a few words exchanged, nothing important. But I found myself listening for her voice before I pushed the door open, like if she wasn't there the place would feel wrong. Today, she beat me to it again. Book in hand, glasses off this time. She looked up when I walked in, and for a second, it was as if she'd been waiting. Probably my imagination. "Coffee?" she asked, nodding toward the paper cup in my hand. "Yeah." "Black?" I said, then regretted how dumbly plain that sounded. "I figured. You never carry sugar." She went back to her book. I don't know why that stuck with me, her noticing something I hadn't said out loud. I loaded my clothes, coins clinking. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her tilt her thermos, take a slow sip, and place it carefully back on the bench. My girlfriend never noticed those small things. She didn't care how I took my coffee, or that I never used fabric softener. But this woman had. I wanted to say something, anything, to stretch the moment, but words jammed in my throat. Instead, I folded the empty coffee sleeve between my fingers until it tore. "You always come Tuesdays?" she asked suddenly, eyes still on the page. "Yeah. It just fits." A pause. Then, "Me too." That was all. But I couldn't stop glancing at her hands as she turned the page, slow and deliberate, like each word deserved time. I should have been thinking about other things, about the text my girlfriend had sent earlier, warning me about my brother, about how I needed to draw a line. But here I was, staring at a woman twice my age, wondering why it felt easier to breathe sitting 2 machines away from her. When my cycle ended, I lingered, folding my shirts too carefully, smoothing each one as if that explained the delay. She closed her book, looked straight at me for the first time that hour, and said, "You're quieter today." I forced a laugh. "Guess I ran out of laundry stories." Her smile was small but warm. She stood, slipped her glasses into her bag, and before leaving, she said, almost like a casual afterthought, "See you next week, then?" The door closed behind her, leaving only the machines and their steady churn. I looked down at my phone, half expecting a new text from my girlfriend, or maybe even from my brother. Nothing. Just the silence of the laundromat, and the faint trace of her tea still in the air. I told myself it was nothing. Just laundry, just coincidence. But when I walked home, folding the coffee sleeve into my pocket, I knew I'd be there next Tuesday, whether or not my clothes needed washing. The following Tuesday, I almost convinced myself not to go. My hamper wasn't even full. But by late afternoon, I found myself carrying a half bag of clothes down the block anyway, coffee sleeve from last week still folded in my jacket pocket like some strange excuse. She was already there. Same bench, book unopened this time, thermos beside her. When I came in, she gave me a quick smile, not wide, just enough to say she noticed. "You came light today," she said, glancing at my half-empty basket. "Yeah," I admitted, setting it down. "Guess I ran out of laundry." The way her eyebrow lifted made me think she didn't believe me, but she didn't press. Instead, she unscrewed her thermos and poured a little tea into its cap, offering it across the space between us. Try. It's ginger. Might be too strong. I hesitated, then took it. Our fingers brushed, barely. The warmth of the tea bled through the thin metal, but it was her touch I noticed, quick as it was. Not bad, I said after a sip. Kind of sharp. Helps with the cold, she replied, folding her hands around the thermos again. She looked down at them, and her voice softened. My ex hated it. Said it made the house smell like medicine. There it was, something personal, slipped out almost without warning. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask, to hear more, but another part warned me away. Instead, I just nodded. She didn't look at me. I went through the motions of loading my clothes, but my thoughts snagged on what she'd said. Ex. The word lingered. It made her seem more real, more reachable somehow, and also further out of bounds. Do you miss it? I asked finally. The smell? She gave a small laugh, quiet but genuine. Sometimes. Sometimes not. Some things you only realize you miss when they're gone. The way she said it landed heavier than I expected. I folded a shirt just to have something in my hands. My phone buzzed in my pocket, girlfriend again. I didn't look. Not with her sitting there. We spent the rest of the cycle mostly in silence. But it wasn't empty. It was the kind of quiet where you hear every little thing, the turning of a page, the tap of her ring against the thermos, my own shallow breaths when she shifted closer on the bench to make room for a basket that never came. When my dryer stopped, I packed slowly, dragging out the last few minutes. She stood when I did. Same time next week? She asked, eyes steady on mine. I almost said yes too quickly, but instead I made a joke to cover it. If my socks hold out. She smiled, a real one this time, and reached out, not much, just a light touch to the sleeve of my jacket as she passed. Barely there, but it stayed longer in my chest than any word could have. On the walk home, I kept replaying that moment. Her hand on my sleeve, her steady look. I didn't know why it stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It was the first Tuesday she wasn't there. I walked in, basket in hand, already rehearsing some small remark about the weather, about tea, anything to start. But the bench in the corner sat empty. Bookless. The air felt colder, louder. I loaded my clothes too quickly, trying to look like I hadn't expected anything else. Halfway through the wash cycle, the door opened. She came in, hair damp from rain, jacket clinging to her shoulders. A breath left me before I could stop it. You're late, I said, immediately regretting how it sounded, like I'd been waiting. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. Bus was slow. She sat, pulling her book out, but she didn't open it. I wanted to ask more, but something in her posture, arms tight across her chest, lips pressed in, made me hold back. The silence pressed between us heavier than usual. When my dryer buzzed, she finally spoke. I wasn't sure I'd come today. I turned, trying to read her. Why? She shrugged, eyes still fixed on the floor. Felt strange. Like maybe I'm intruding. The word stung. I took too long to answer. By then she was already unscrewing her thermos, filling the cap, sipping without offering this time. I shifted closer on the bench, enough that our shoulders almost touched. You're not, I said quietly. My voice cracked on it. She finally looked at me. Rain had left a few strands of hair stuck to her cheek. For a second, I almost reached out. Almost. Then the door swung open. A man about my age, neighbor from upstairs, strode in, lugging a heavy basket. He nodded at me, then at her, like he knew us. He dumped his clothes in the machine closest to ours, humming loudly, filling the air with something careless and too bright. She pulled back, straightened her jacket, pressed her book shut without reading a word. The distance between us grew sharp, deliberate. The neighbor muttered something about the rain, about the dryer cost. I answered automatically, not hearing myself. She stayed silent. When his machine finally started, she rose. I should go. Too quick. Too final. Wait, I said before I could think. At least, I broke off. No idea what I'd meant. She paused, turned slightly. Her eyes softened just a fraction. You remind me. She started, then shook her head. Never mind. I wanted to ask. Needed to. But the neighbors shifted noisily, and the moment collapsed. She tightened her scarf, gave me a small nod, and stepped toward the door. Something in me rebelled. I stood too, moved before I thought, and when she passed, my hand brushed against hers, not accidental. She froze, eyes lifting to mine. It wasn't a kiss. Not even a word. Just that small, suspended second where it could have been either. Then she pulled her hand back, slow but sure. Next week, she whispered. And left. It was raining again the next Tuesday, harder this time. I almost turned back, but I saw her through the window before I could. She wasn't in her corner seat, she was standing by the dryer, arms folded, eyes fixed on the spinning drum like she was trying not to look anywhere else. When I stepped in, she glanced at me, quick, then away. You're late, she said, echoing my own words from last week. Traffic. I lied, though I'd been early. I didn't know why I lied. The machines were too loud, the rain drumming harder on the roof. I sat near her, close enough to smell the faint ginger from her thermos. She didn't offer this time, just held it between her hands like something fragile. You seem distant, I said finally. My voice sounded foreign in my own ears. She didn't look up. Maybe I should be. That landed like a stone. My hands tightened on the edge of the bench. You're not. I stopped, restarted. You're not intruding. Her laugh was short, almost bitter. That's not what I meant. I wanted to ask what she did mean, but my throat locked. Instead, I watched the reflection of the dryer lights in the window. She shifted, set the thermos down too firmly on the bench. I saw you, she said quietly. I turned. What? With her. The girl. Outside your building. She finally looked at me, steady this time. Your girlfriend? Heat rose to my face. I nodded once. Her mouth pressed in, as if confirming something she already knew. You're too young, she said, almost to herself. I'm not. I started, then stopped. Too defensive. Too sharp. I rubbed the back of my neck. She doesn't notice things. Not like you. The words came out raw, unpolished, too close to truth. Her eyes flickered, softened for just a second, then hardened again. You don't know what you're saying. I do. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I wait for Tuesdays. Even when I don't have laundry. Silence swallowed the space. She stared at her hands, fingers curled tight around each other. My chest hammered with the weight of what I hadn't said, what I wanted to. Her voice, when it came, was quieter. You think that's harmless? You think it doesn't mean anything? I couldn't answer. Not without giving everything away. The machines buzzed, cycle ending. Neither of us moved. Finally, she turned, eyes meeting mine with a kind of weary honesty. What are we doing? The question hung there, louder than the rain, louder than the dryers. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because I knew if I spoke, the next word might undo everything. The following Tuesday, I went early. Too early. My laundry barely filled half a washer, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to be there before her, to claim the space, to prove something to myself. But she never came. The cycles ran out, one after another, and the laundromat emptied. The hum of machines slowed, then stopped, until it was just me folding shirts I didn't care about. I told myself maybe she was late, maybe the rain kept her, maybe anything. But even after I stretched out the folding, smoothed every sleeve, lingered by the dryers, nothing. The bench stayed empty. The week dragged. By Thursday, I convinced myself it was nothing. Just mistiming. On Friday, I saw her outside the building, arms full of groceries, hair tied back, no glasses. She noticed me too. For a second I thought she might stop. But she only gave a small nod and kept walking. No thermos. No book. No. See you next week. I wanted to call after her, to say something stupid like your tea was stronger than you thought, or I saved the corner seat. But the words stuck. By Saturday night, my girlfriend asked if I was distracted. I told her I was tired. She didn't press. She never did. Sunday, I checked the bench in the laundromat again, though I had nothing to wash. Still empty. It wasn't until Monday evening that I found something I wasn't supposed to. Coming up the stairs, I saw her door cracked, the lights spilling out. Voices inside. A man's laugh, low, comfortable. My chest tightened before my brain could catch up. I slowed, lingered by my door, waiting. He stepped out first, older, carrying himself like he belonged. Maybe an ex. Maybe not. He glanced at me, gave a polite nod, and left. She came out a moment later, holding the doorframe like she needed the support. Her eyes caught mine, surprised then guarded. "You're home," she said, as if she hadn't noticed the time. "Yeah," I managed. My voice felt thin. She didn't explain. Didn't need to. She just gave me that small, careful smile, the one that closed doors instead of opening them. Then she went back inside, shutting it softly. That night I typed out a message. Tuesday? Same time? I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over send. Then I erased it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. On Tuesday, I went to the laundromat anyway. Sat on the bench, coffee in hand, staring at the door each time it opened. She never came. The seat beside me stayed empty, the way silence does when it means more than noise. It wasn't Tuesday. It wasn't even laundry day. I didn't plan it. I was walking back from the corner store when I saw her outside the building, fumbling with her keys, grocery bags slipping down her arm. I almost passed by, almost pretended not to notice, but I didn't. "Here," I said, stepping forward before I could change my mind. I caught the bag before it fell. She looked at me, startled, then softened just enough to let me follow her up the stairs. Inside her apartment, the air smelled faintly of ginger and books. She set the groceries down on the counter, exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all day. "You don't have to," she started. "I know," I cut in, placing the bag beside hers. My voice came out sharper than I wanted. I tried again, quieter. "I just wanted to." She didn't answer right away. Just leaned against the counter, watching me with that same careful distance I'd felt all week. Finally she said, "This isn't fair. To you. To me." I swallowed. "Maybe not. But it's the only thing that feels." I stopped. The word right stuck in my throat. Too heavy. Too much. Her eyes flicked away, toward the window. "I'm older. I'm set in ways you don't even see yet. You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said. My hands curled against my sides. "But I'm already regretting not saying it." Silence. The fridge hummed. Rain ticked faintly against the glass. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, restless. "You have a girlfriend." I nodded. "I know. And I don't look for her on Tuesdays." The words came out raw, almost broken. "I look for you." Her breath hitched, not loud, not dramatic, just enough that I saw it. She pressed her hand flat against the counter, grounding herself. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Finally, she stepped closer. Not all the way, just enough that the space between us wasn't a canyon anymore. Her hand lifted slightly, like she might touch my arm, then stopped in the air. "I can't," she whispered. But her voice trembled. "I know," I said. My chest hurt from holding everything in. Her hand hovered, then fell softly against mine. Just a touch. Barely there, but real. We stood like that, in her kitchen, with nothing said that could undo it, and nothing said that could seal it either. Then she gave me the smallest smile, tired but genuine, like she was admitting something without saying it. "Okay," she murmured. And somehow, that was enough. "Did this story stay with you?" What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a confession or a kiss in the rain. No dramatic breakups, no declarations. Just small things, quiet things, that over time began to look like a life. Tuesdays stopped being about laundry. We still went sometimes, but more often we just met on the bench outside, coffee in my hand, thermos in hers. She still teased me for drinking mine black, and I still pretended to hate the bite of her ginger tea, though I didn't anymore. 8:47 a.m. became our time. Not by choice, it just happened. I'd glance at the clock, and almost without fail, that was when she was there. Waiting, or maybe just arriving at the same rhythm as me. Her apartment slowly became less unfamiliar. Groceries carried upstairs, quiet dinners at her small table, the comfort of someone sitting across from you while you sort your thoughts without needing to explain them. She told me once, in passing, about her daughter who lived in another city, about how silence in the apartment used to feel heavy. I didn't know what to say. So I just listened. She seemed to like that better. There were moments I faltered. Times when guilt caught up, when the weight of the age gap or my girlfriend's lingering messages pressed too hard. Once, I even drafted a text to her. Maybe this was a mistake. I never sent it. Instead, I showed up the next Tuesday with coffee, and she handed me tea without a word. That was her way of answering. Months passed like that. Not perfect. Not simple. But steady. One morning, sitting on the laundromat bench while the machines churned, she looked over at me and said, "Funny, isn't it? How we started here." "Yeah," I said, folding the coffee sleeve between my fingers like I always did. "I didn't even need to wash clothes that day." She laughed, quiet, genuine. Neither did I. We sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't ask for filling. When my phone buzzed, brother this time, not my girlfriend, I almost ignored it. But I didn't. I glanced, replied quickly, then put it face down. She noticed. Her hand brushed mine, casual, grounding. Not a claim, not a secret. Just a gesture that said, "You're here?" "I'm here." That's enough. And it was. Looking back, I can't point to the moment it shifted from coincidence to routine, from routine to something else. Maybe it was always in the small things, the teacup she filled for me, the way she remembered my coffee, the empty bench that made me restless. Now, when I think of her, I don't feel paused anymore. I feel steady. Like life remembered to finish the sentence. And when she looks at me across the table, that small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth, I know she feels it too. Speech balloon, did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?